Welcome back, everybody. Um, since a great, at least success in my eyes, we're continuing our path into Genesis 1. Um, I feel like an icebreaker, um, discovering the North Pole, where it's like going where you've not been before, not having the territory mapped out for you. Although there is a map, right? But it's like a sort of an alien map, something that's not immediately clear. And in this, at least I find a lot of things reveal themselves. I've been reading Genesis 1, 2, and 3 as preparation for following things, although we won't get anywhere close to that. Um, And one of the things I notice is that I just miss an enormous amount of things that are written down. There are many relevant aspects that I just couldn't see, right? Like, because I looked at it fairly carefully before, and there's just things I didn't notice. And then the question is, well, why didn't I, right? Like, because I didn't have the ability to receive or be open to what was there. And yeah, I do feel like slowly my eyes are opening, and the text is speaking for itself. Um, and so we're gonna go over the things that we did in a faster time so that we can refresh our memory, because I'm also having a really hard time getting back into it. Like this, like I was just reading Genesis 3, but it's like I don't know, like it feels different. Like it feels like that they're far apart, if that makes sense, right? Like I have to move a lot in between them. Um, so yeah, Gustav, what was your experience?
My experience has been that since we last talked, there's been a bit of you know like churn, and I get to sleep a little bit, and I get to have some new experiences, and just to put my mind in a different frame. And I've kind of noticed certain perspectives on the first couple of days of creation, and not just it's sort of a perspective on the days, but it's also like a hermeneutical perspective. Like it's a perspective of how I should look at it, and maybe you know uh, because I'm thinking that in the first no, not in the first, in general, in during the days of creation, there's all these categories of things being created, and they're very high categories, and I've kind of to a certain extent given up on trying to understand exactly what those nouns are, like what's being created to a certain extent. Like I'm just looking at them as sort of like it's a creation of a relationship between these things. So it's like a little bit more of a humble, I guess, perspective on what I even can understand about it and what I do understand and how I should look at it. Like I've kind of become more self-aware about the way I've been reading it and realizing that it's really limited.
Yeah, they're like symbols. They hold things, right? But they're also constraints, right? Because like not everything fits into them, right? And then you have the whole structure of the text, right? Which is the creation, which is like an unfolding of these constraints, right? Or the overlapping, or the progressively building upon each other of the constraints. Um, and then there's this interaction of God with them, right? So there's like this thing outside of the constraints that's setting them, that's judging them, that's having a relationship to the constraints, and all of this comes together in a certain manner that um, well, yeah, like what does it actually do, right? That's kind of also the mystery, right? But but it's yeah, like I wanted to say an approach, but it's I think like approach is maybe better than attitude because it's like independent of you, right? Like it's a path towards something by which like you get led to a place, to a stance, right? To a way of being that you get to participate in. And I've been thinking a lot about being, right? Like being in the sense of that it's something that is that you partake in, right? And so Genesis is the creation of the being that you get to partake in, right? So it's like a nature of being. Um, and if you are in that nature of being, like the promise is that uh, God is with you or something, right? At least not in Genesis 1, but in Genesis 2, that aspect comes in. So and I think the functionality of Genesis 1, right? Like so Genesis 1 places man as a office because I think that's maybe the best way to think of these things. They're offices, right? They can be occupied. Um, and so man in the image of God is an office that humans can take. Um, and then the second Genesis 2 is where the office uh, gets set in the world, right? Like God places man in the world. Um, so yeah, I don't want to go too far. Like I guess we can just start going to Genesis 1. The start. We'll go through it fast and like see if we want to add something on what we did. I want to start adding because like I kind of added it last time. I added it a little bit out because I was confused about what day zero is, right? The beginning. Um, and the point that I wanted to make was God is not speaking, right? At day zero, God is not speaking, right? And so, in some sense, he needs to have something to speak to first. um, and I think the voice, what is spoken, how it's spoken, because I noticed that in Genesis, the the action of God changes across the days. And there's a shift after day three, right? Like there's the groundwork has been laid of Earth and um, and what is on Earth, right? Or the arena has been set, right? And then it gets populated with things, right? And so the population of something is different than the setting of the stage. I think this also gets revisited in Genesis 3, but I'll leave that for what it is right now. But it's important to realize because I'll just read the first part, right? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form, void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And so we got the form, void, and darkness that we pointed out as three aspects with with the corresponding days, right? Darkness and light, void and firmament, and form and the dry ground are the connections that are made there. And um, and so beginning and speaking, right, is the prerequisite for the speaking is the heaven and the earth having this interaction with the spirit in between. Um, and we also saw that from this, right? Like this was like un unattainable, right? Like it was outside of what we can relate to. So in Plato, this would be outside of the cave, right? Uh, it would be a reality that is veiled from us through the firmament. Um, so yeah, Gustav, you wanna say something or do day two? Day one, sorry.
Yeah, I think something that stands out to me is that, well, the creation of heaven and earth is different than the other kinds of creations that happen later on in the other days. And well, because in the later ones there's a lot of splitting apart and interactions and so on. But on day zero, the heaven and earth, they don't really seem to have much of a relationship to each other, sort of I guess ontologically or something like that, other than that they are created at the same time. They're sort of in parallel, and it's also that's an observation that we only make in light of the future days, right? So there's this going back, and uh, that that non-relation or something like that doesn't really stand out much unless you have the other stuff.
Yeah, so that's good, right? So in other words, you're saying that through the establishment of things throughout the days, the starting condition or the way that we see the starting condition changes, right? Like it sheds light, it reflects back onto it.
Yep.
And so the first thing that happens is with the light, right? Like they were presupposing darkness in the day zero, right? But like darkness without light doesn't make any sense. So the quality of darkness, right, that is existing after the creation of light is a different quality of darkness than the darkness that uh, subsequently takes place. And we've been talking about, well, we I shared a video with you where we're talking about the day and what is a day, right? And that there's different usages of the word day. Um, I also, well, we talked about the day gets defined throughout this, right? But also the meaning of the word is dependent on that which it uh, it affects, right? Like it's talking about, right? So obviously the word can't have the same meaning because it entails more. And so I guess as someone who's relating to the text, we're called to do two things, right? So we're supposed to shed like a whole lot of presuppositions, right? Like we come in and we're reading these words and we're bringing up a whole lot of baggage with us, and that's troubling our sight, right? Like it's troubling our sight on what's being talked about. But at the same time, we need to bring what we know with us, else we can't make sense of what's being said, right? So there's a careful navigation there, right? And it's like an attunement, right? Like so which parts of my understanding fit the text, so I should hold on to them, and which parts should I discard?
It's kind of the same pattern of uh, revelation as the thing with the heaven and the earth creation being different, because like you understand it in light of what comes after, or sort of like this the manifestation gives us the tool to interpret the thing where it comes from, and that's really messy and difficult and uh, dangerous, even I would say.
Okay, you can go ahead with day one.
Day one. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Well, there's multiple points that kind of stand out to me here, which are that because because the day is sort of defined here, it's actually like the days that follow are now being put into the container of light or something. So there's also this really heavy relationship where uh, you don't have this sort of parallel creation event happening in the days that follow. It's more like they're being folded within the first day. Uh, and also, it stands out to me that the light was good before the light was divided from the darkness. And so I don't know what to do with that.
Well. Um, it's interesting because I wanted to point out the division, right, which is the second act, right? So it's not only the creation of the light, there's also a division, right? And so God did not create the darkness, right? Like God created the light, and the light entered the darkness or something, right? And he defined the light as good, right? So the nature of the light is inherently good, right? Um, so you could say with our perception, right? Like the things that come into light for us are inherently good, right? Um, and therefore light stands out from darkness, right? Like now you have the issue with the fall, and there's a bunch of consequences with the fall, right? Where the things that come to light as a consequence of us eating the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil bring in a whole set of other things, right? So we corrupt the light by trying to master it effectively, right? Like that's the move that happens, right? We're trying to be the source of the light, right? We're trying to be a lamp ourselves and shine, um, be as gods, right? Like we say like that is important and that is not, right? Instead of letting the light that's being shown from heaven show us what's important and what's not. Um, and oh yeah, I had a realization about the evening, right? So the evening, I think, is um, the closing off of that what was before, right? Because in order to bring in something new, you need to close off the old. So I also been thinking about rituals and rituals of transition, right? And it like in order for something to come, something else needs to die, right? So the evening is also the death of that was before, and the introduction of a new era, right? Like the new day. Um, okay, you good? So the second day, and God said, "Let there be a firmament, firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament with the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. So I have a bunch of things to say here because here the Dutch translation started to illuminate something, right? So the word that we use for firmament is gewelf, which is also called sluice. Like it's that which separates the waters that are on a higher level from the waters that are on a lower level, right? And allows the ships to navigate in between, all right? So that also says something, right? So because like what are the waters that are on a higher level? Well, the waters that are on a higher level are a pressure, right? Like they're flowing into the lower level. So there's something there with where there's a nature of well, I guess eros or something, right? Like there's an attraction, right? Like there's a capturing. Uh, 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 um, And so there's a natural flow. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing that I saw. It's like from that flow also follows hierarchy, right? Because now there's an ordering, right? Because if there's directionality now, in that directionality there's sequence, ordering, all of these things, right? Um, and so when we're talking about separation, right? Like, well, this is a different separation than darkness from light, right? So darkness from light is in vision or something, right? Or in attention or in the spotlight. Um, high from low, right? Means there's a separation in movement, in status, in primacy, origin, all of these things, right? So that all of these ideas are uh, um, setting up a stage upon which things can happen, right? Or like yeah. And so I was actually making the connection also with the Netherlands, right? Because we're poldering, right? Like we're creating dry land, which is the third day, right? But we're literally using structures to keep out the high waters so that we have land to work on. I'm like, like why is this like all so mapping onto Genesis 1, 2, and 3? Uh, but yeah, like in some sense, God is like poldering, right? So he's artificially creating this space in which life then can settle. Um, and that also means that these seconds heavens are artificially holding back the waters. Like yeah, and so this relationship also gets recreated in Noah, right, with the rainbow, and but that's in the human domain, right? So that human domain is like if you are in my covenant, then I will. You are holding back the waters, right? You are holding back the flood. You create this space on earth that is protected from the flood, right? Um, yeah. So I also wanted to note that the speaking is it precedes the response, right? So there's a there's the speaking, there's the response, and then there's the creation act, right? The setting of the firmament. So there's something with the actor, right, and the acted upon, right, the heaven and the earth, and different actions, right? Because the speaking isn't an imposition, right? Like when God speaks, there's a adherence of the earth, right? When God makes something, He imposes something, right? So the imposition and the speaking are not the same action.
I I like the hierarchy thing. I like the dam, and it also it's interesting that like yeah, there's this hierarchy and there's a flow, there's an energy, a force, but uh like the dispersion of hierarchy entirely uh isn't what we want. It isn't like you don't want to remove the dam and just equalize everything. Usually in a hierarchy, and there's a reason for that. And I'm not sure whether that reason is contained in this second day. Like there's a creation of a hierarchy, but I'm not sure whether there's the whether the goodness of the hierarchy is established on the second day, if that makes sense. Because the elimination of the hierarchy, the taking away of the firmament and just the flowing of the waters back together, that's a kind of that's a movement. But am I making sense?
Well, yeah, you are making sense, and I'm reading, and like again, I didn't notice, but the word good isn't on the second day.
Yeah, it's not, and that's a thing that Peugeot has talked about, and a bunch of people have talked about, and I think, yeah, there's this idea that also it shows up later in scripture, in uh, in the Gospels as well, of like the roof being removed and sort of things coming back together, or the veil being removed at a marriage. But yeah, there's this idea that at the end, at the eschaton, or whatever, the firmament is removed, and there's a, what's it called? It's like a communion or a joining together without uh what's it called? Like without confusion, without mixing. This guy, he's an Orthodox apologist, Seraphim Hamilton. He made a really good video about this. But there's also this thing about the firmament being called heaven, which is a name being given that is already existing in the text.
Hmm.
And that makes me think about the idea that you mentioned about office, that man is an office, that like the firmament is being called heaven, even though heaven already exists. It's like being
That's the image,
like,
right?
yeah,
like, so what happens is like heaven is a role, right? Like heaven is the masculine acting, right? The source, and so when you have the primary source, like there's a secondary source that is conveying the primary source, right? So, because you need that in order to have complexity, right? So you could do it with the king, right? Like the king is in his throne room, and then from the throne room, things need to be entering into the kingdom, right? Or same goes for your brain, right? Like you're thinking things in your brain, and then they need to enter into your body. So they're leaving the brain. And whatever enters your body is not the thing that was in your head because it gets translated into a signal, right? And the signal is an essentializing of the message that is tailored to the body part, right? Because if the body part gets information that is for the brain, right? Then you get what we have with social media now, right? It's like, oh, like I'm getting information about my nation's relationship with Russia, and I'm supposed to have an opinion about that. It's like, why? Like that's not your place. You're not in a position to judge it, right? Um, like you're in a dependency, and the only person that can judge that dependency is the head, right? And like that doesn't make the head right. It just makes the head the only one that can be right. And that's a different problem. Anyway, so that's what an office is, right? Because like the head, like it doesn't matter who's at the position of the head. It's that they are plugged in as the head, right? And they're trained as the head, right? Because like that's the other side of the equation. I want to go to day three.
And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. Well, something I noticed just now is that the word for the dry land or the dry earth isn't actually given. So in the text we're reading right now, it's in italics, which means that it's a word that has been put into this translation that isn't a word for word translation from the Hebrew original. So in the Hebrew original, it will be something like, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered unto one place, and let the dryness appear," and it was so. So it's sort of like this noun that means the dryness, and dryness, yeah, it's just something to think about, that like there may be a correspondence between the dryness and the earth, from the very first verse of Genesis 1, but it's not it's not the same way as the firmament being called heaven or something. Except it is, because then God calls the dry land earth.
Well, yeah. So yeah. In my Dutch translation, it also says land, right? So land is not Earth, right? Because Earth is is like the planet, right? And land is like a subset of the planet, right? Um, so when we're talking about, well, I wanted to first talk a little bit about the movement, right? Because the movement isn't that the land appears, right? The movement is the gathering of the waters, right? So there's a containment of water, which is the same thing as the as that happened with the water in the heavens, right? Because um, so again, right, like that's an action, right? Like it's because you need to hold them back, right? So the dry land is as a consequence of a imposition of God, um, and so you could also say the imposition of God is a purpose, right? So the purpose creates the land that is goes with it, right? So another way to say that is the heavens, right? We'll get into that with day four, right? The heavens designate a star, right, that shines the light upon the earth, and the earth responds, right? Well, with land, right? Like it gives up the land that to be shown on, and so that's a response, right? That's a relationary thing, um, not so much as a carving out or whatever, right? It's more a union, a coming together. And the same goes with speaking, right? Like the speaking gets a response, the action, like, and why am I pointing at this? Because when when we think of I don't know, designating or something, right? We think of putting in a calculator, right? 1 + 1 = 2, right? And you just press the return thing, right? And you basically you enslave the calculator into forcing it to give you the response that you want from it. And I think that's the wrong modality, right? Like, because in reality, the answer isn't consistent, right? Like the answer is contextual, right? And this goes back to the offices thing, right? Like the 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 way that I respond to your order when I'm holding an office is going to be different than someone else that would be in my place. So it's important to know who's occupying the relational dynamic. Um, So I want to point a little bit about the trees and the grass because what you said to me um, after we talked made something click. So I think the we were you were talking about grass without trees drying in the sun, right? And so to me, it's like, oh yes, there's a pairing of the trees and the the grass because there's a shadow caused by the tree that is providing a living space to the grass, right? So there's again, right, like there's a relational component there where there's a communion between the grass and the tree, and if you look at it that way, right, now what you're seeing is like you're getting little microcosms, right, which are a reflection of day two, right, under every tree because you have this idea of a microbiome, right, or a micro climate or whatever, right, where there's these areas that have a certain quality, and within that quality, certain things can happen, but they presuppose that area, right, and without the area, they can't exist, right, and so if you see that as the tree and the grass, right, you can see that the shape of the tree will dictate the response of the grass, right? And then the grass, they will do stuff to the ground, right? And also shape the tree, right? So now you're having the dance between heaven and earth uh, at a smaller scale, right? And then in some sense, right, this is like you also take something of permanence, right, or like really low time scales, which is uh, just the climate as such, right? Heaven and earth, raining, sun, all of these things, right? And you're doing that in smaller cycles, right? Between the trees and the leaves falling and the fruits falling, right? Like all of these interactions, they happen at a faster scale, right? Um, and we'll probably get into that on day four, but that's what I wanted to point out.
So yeah, the third day, it's the stuff about the grass. I think really does make sense about because there's a bunch of places in scripture where it talks about grass drying out and being harvested and things like that. And I think it's a good image of materiality or materialism, something like that. It's like it's got this huge quantity and uh, it's hubristic because the the grass has no idea that it's going to dry out if it doesn't have the tree while it's still growing, right? Because you only have grass growing not under the tree, like in the field. You only have grass growing in the field when there's plenty of rain and also plenty of sunshine, and it's like it's nice. It's just a nice time.
Well, yeah, and clouds, right? So then the protection of that the tree provides needs to be provided by the higher heavens, right?
Yeah,
So
and
so
so
that
so the existence of grass somewhere outside trees presupposes comfortable conditions, and the grass and the lifetime of the grass is small enough that those comfortable conditions have been through its whole life, and it can just continue presupposing them until they're gone. So you'd better be connected to that which pre-exists you, otherwise it's going to be rough.
right. So a different way to say that is things can exist with the blessing of heaven, right? Because like what you're saying is okay, if you can exit your life cycle, you're blessed, you're lucky, right? Um, and there's just plenty of grass that's just lucky, and gets to live its full life cycle fruitfully, right, or seedfully. And but there's more guarantees for the grass that's beneath the tree, right? But there's also not full guarantees because there's floods, right? But so there's um, but they don't need the blessing of the heavens, right? They need the tree to be blessed, right, so that the tree can be their heaven, and then obviously the heavens don't shouldn't hate them, right? Because and like still things befall.
Yeah,
Um,
I think rivers embody this this aspect as well, which is that next to a river you always have fresh water. But when you're outside of a river, like yeah, sure, maybe it's nice and rainy and you have enough water to drink and so on, but it's unreliable.
right,
But if you live next to a river, then there'll always be water there, and I think it's something similar to a relationship with God, which is that if you aren't in a church, or if you aren't in a really big church and a really long existing church, then sure, maybe you have good times, but it's a good thing to be next to something reliable. But I'm pretty sure that also has trade-offs, because
sure.
if you're in a if you're at the mouth of a river, there's actually less land there, and there's a lot more people there, and that brings its own sort of
Well,
difficulties.
the Bible gets to that, right? Like, it actually deals with these issues. I don't know if it's are framed in that manner, but like they do come up. Um, but to go back, right? So it says grass and fruit they're yielding after their kind, right? So there's also a continuation with change, right? So it's like, well, you're kind of doing the same thing, right? Because like the tree is still gonna be at a roughly similar place, doing a roughly similar function, having a roughly similar shape, but that's where the identicality uh, stops, right? Same goes for the grass, right? Um, and so what it introduces is generations, right? Because like there's mutations that follow uh, likeness instead instead of identicality, right? Okay, so I think we want to go a little bit slower to day four because I don't feel like we fully gave it the attention that it deserves, right? So God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be signs and for seasons and for days and years." Um, so yeah, um, so the lights and in the heavens or the firmament are separate day from night, and they are in the mediating structures, not the waters. They're on the firmament, like explicitly in uh, in my Bible in the Dutch, right? So the point there is that they're a quality of that which hold back the heavenly waters or something. Um, so you could also see it as fruits or something, right? They're inherent or they're coming from the structure that holds things up. Um, and so we were having quite a little bit of trouble with saying what are these signs, seasons, days, and years. Um, so
Well, I kind of there's bad in here, which I think maybe is relevant, maybe isn't. But I studied I studied biology, and part of that was learning about sort of the evolution of life, and a big part of that evolution, which you kind of learn about, is about the evolution of seeds and of reproductive organs. And there's a big shift that happens uh, in different ways, but basically that organisms start out way back. There's sort of there seems to have only been one sex, like a unisexual organism, and then and as time goes by, you start to notice that two different sexes develop, and what happens is that you see that the what are they called? The reproductive cells, the gametes, they uh, they diverge from each other. So you start with both the male and the female gamete being the same size, and then they sort of the female gamete becomes big, and there's not that many of them, and then the male gametes, there's just a billion, and they're really small and tiny. And I think this is something similar where you have uh, the two different lights, which the sun and the moon. It's very very sexual, and it also has like it's a concentration of light within the sphere of night and within the sphere of day, because there already was light in the day, but it's now being concentrated from a certain place. So it's being given a also like a hierarchy, but then there's also a light being given to the night, which didn't seem to have light before then. So it's like a gift to the night.
Right, but so a couple things. Like I think the day and night are no longer the same, right? Like this is a structural change of the day and night as a consequence of this, right? So I like this idea that the sun is like capturing all of the light, but also like there's a there's a bunch of things that occur with that because if all the light is in one place, then that means that that place is connected to everywhere that there's light, right? Um, so it's gonna be the source of everything daily. Let's just uh, so that's one aspect of it. There's also, like you said, right? Like it's the big thing relating to the multiplicity, right? So everything, right, related to the one, right? So you have the one and the many is the same relationship we've seen, right? Like the one tree with a lot of grass below it, right? Like there's a, but I guess in some sense, I guess the light is like the crown of the day or something, right? Um,
You mean the sun or the light?
well, the sun, sorry, yes,
Oh, sorry, yeah.
thank you. Yeah, sorry. I was equating those, which is stupid. Yeah. So yeah, no, this the sun is the crown of the day, right? So things flow from the crown. It it directs the day, right? Like a whole bunch of relationary qualities. And so how does the day become different? Because that's why we got there, right? So well, I also said it rules the day, right? The greater light to rule the day. And also, it's actually not literally talking about the sun, which is interesting. Um, so so ruling the day means that in the day something happened, right? So we were already talking about the day as a beginning and an end, right? The morning and the evening, and then the movement of the sun is that which guides the manifestation of like it's you have the sunflowers, right? Like they open up in the morning, they orient towards the sun, they move, and then they close, right? So like I like that's the movement I see, right? So there's a response to the sun by the earth, um, and and that's a cycle, right? And then the moon, I see. So it basically says that the night is not complete darkness, right? So like in some sense, this is like introducing sleep or something, right? So there's a in the night there's also existence because before this, like was there something between the end of the one thing and the beginning of the other thing? It's like, is there a transition period, or is there just uh, connection, right, or sequence? And so, like, if you have a moon to rule the night, right, like then you have a transition period, right? So if you're saying, well, I have the one identity and the identity ends, like, what is the thing that guides towards the new identity? Well, that would be the moon then, right? Um, so I guess like with that you there's a break in continuity, if that do you understand what I mean?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah,
Like,
there's a hierarchization being given that has like it. There's an implied boundary, I think, but like you're talking about the boundary or the firmament or whatever between these categories is a bit more implied now. It's not explicitly given.
well, but what is it? What is a day, right? Like a day is an identity, right? Like you're holding on to an identity, right? And so when there's something that can have multiple identities, right? You need to go from one identity to the next, right? So you have a linear identity, which is grass seed, right? But if you think of man, right? I can be child, be friends, be husband, right? Be grandfather. I have a bunch of identities that I need to swap in between, and I need to dress them, right? I need to clothe myself in them, um, while having a persistence that separate from them, right? So there's like I don't think I'm completely mapping onto what's happening there, but I think the transition between identities while holding on to a third identity or something, right, is the thing that the moon does, right?
Hmm.
So let's just say created in the image of God, right? Like that's the permanence of an identity that we have, right? But then within that image, the role that we fill changes, right? And that's our hopping from one to the other, right? Like wandering in the desert is where the moon. I see the moon.
Hmm. Well, so there's also something to slightly change the topic. There's something difficult in this fourth day for me, which is that you have these repetitive categories, because even in the first verse, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. So the light was called day, right?
Is
If
that
we refer back to the first, like, I forget which verse. It's the fifth verse of this thing. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So
yes?
when you're talking about the fourth day, like which light is, so like there's this there's this really strong relationship between light and then day, and then also there's this light being created in the firmament of heaven. And then
Hmm.
when it further goes on to talk about light and lights, now is it talking about the light which was created on the first day, or is it the day that was named on the first day, or is it this new light that is created on the fourth day, which is the sun and moon and stars?
No, I think this is a new light, right? I think this is an image of the first light. So
Yeah.
it's inheriting something, right? But it's also changed because what it affects is the firmament, right? Or that which is below the firmament.
And then also, if we go back to the first day, with the light being called day, does that mean that light is now an image of day, or is day an image of light?
No, day is an image of light, I think. Like day inherits its identity from light. Just like a
Light,
day inherits its identity from the sun, right?
yeah, but
Like
God calls light day, and
right,
then when we go into the firmament, God calls the firmament heaven, and God calls the dryness earth.
right.
So
But
following
this is a
this, light.
but hold on. This is capital day. Like the one here is not capital day.
Okay.
No, but I think it's important, right? So it sets these structures, right? Like like how do I say it, right? Let's just say we're coding because like we know code, right? So we're having this we're assigning this variable, right? Which is an office, right? Because a variable can hold different identities, right? And then we're creating an object which we call Earth, right? Which inherits its stuff from heaven, and within Earth we start populating Earth with these variables, right? But these variables are like object oriented programming, right? Like they hold an object, right? Like so it holds a day, and the day has a bunch of qualities, right? Which were defined outside of the initiation of Earth. So I want to confuse this even more because in uh, in Dutch, seasons gets translated as feasts,
The
right? So
Latvian
so
translates it as um, uh, oh, it says signs that show the interchanges of time,
hmm
which I think might be sort of related to I guess like the equinoxes and things like that. Like when there's a boundary between times. Anyway, feasts.
right. And the lights are related to lamps. And the lights in the heavens are related to lamps, right? So lamps are things you turn on, right? Uh, and they light a specific area, right, with a specific purpose, right? So I think thinking of the lights in heaven as lamps uh, makes a lot of sense in that manner. Um, and
I'll be back in a minute. Sure.
okay, so the reason why I think it's important to see that seasons are related to related to feast is because what are feasts? Well, feasts are like the sounding in of the season. So it's more connected to the evening and morning, the transitory kairos moments, right? So day and night and years would not be kairos moments, right? So day and night would be the eternal continuation between beginning and end. Um, then there's Kairos moments that flip between stages that are being played upon, right? So it's sounding in a new reality or whatever, a new collective attunement, right? So you can say, well, why is spring spring? Well, spring is spring because all the green is manifesting, right? So the way that we recognize spring is that all creation is responding in a certain manner, and that creates a certain spirit, right? And then summer is the fulfillment of that which is set into spring, and then autumn is the dying off of the things that have been created by the seasons, and the winter is like the night is the death of everything impermanent, right? And so when we're looking at the year is holding the cycle from death to death to death to rebirth, right? So what is the distinction between a year and a day is that the year is like a day for life or something, right? Like it's like and the year is also distinct from the day in that the days are in cycles of years and the years are not in cycles of cycles. Right? like like the years are in some sense unbound like the days are by the seasons or something, right? um yeah.
My Latvian translation also, the lights in the firmament are translated yet more as like lamps or something. So it's probably not the same word even in Hebrew.
Yeah, and well, the lights are also assigned as rulers, right? So basically what it's saying is there's these qualitative um transitions between one thing and the next thing, right? You could say that they're identities. I don't know if I like the word identity, right? Maybe it's purposes or something that would be better. Um, so because well, or if they're rulers, right? Like maybe it's better to look at them as dominions or something, right? It's not you you looking up, but it's looking down upon you and telling you what to do, right? So I guess that's the way to resolve that, right? So in other words, the thing that I keep coming back to is everything attends, right? All creation responds, right? Like what is a season? Creation responds. What is a day? Creation response, right? Like what is a year? Creation response, right? And how do we know a day from a season from a year? By the means by which creation responds. And I guess we could say day four is the filling of the hierarchy that we were talking about earlier, right? And saying, well, you without will, right? Because there's no will in creation yet, right? Creation is just adhering uh, to the ruling of the stars, the seasons, and the days, and the moon, all that stuff.
Yeah, it seems quite mechanical in my
Yes,
mind. Yeah.
and it's setting a stage, right? So it's like okay, right? Like these are the preconditions within which you can play, right? Like which in life can occur, right? Um, so we can go to the fifth day. Um, you want to start, or shall I?
You go ahead.
God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly." The moving creature had life, and fowl that may fly above earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the earth." And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. So we can start at, well, both the waters, right? So he's calling upon the waters of heaven and the waters of earth. And he lets both of them uh, be a source. Um, so so you could say that they're both actors on the stage, and the actors on the stage they have two things. Um, they have great creatures, right, like whales and birds, and then they have a fowl, winged fowl, and what is it? Uh, living creature that moveth, whatever that, that means, right? Uh, but it's the multiplicity and the rulers, right? In some sense, like there's the big ones, and then there's everything else that is surrounding or at least relating to the big. Um, and yeah, in some sense they're messengers, right? So they're sent from either below or above, um, to what? To uh, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. Oh, and interesting. Let the fowl multiply in the earth, right? So, like the fowl is is supposed to land, right, and be seeds, right? Like they're supposed to impress the earth. Um, and oh, I've been thinking about the waters, right, and the fish in the waters, right? Because like, what are the fish in the waters? Well, they're relating to what happens on the land, right? Like because if they're not well, how do you get fish on the land? Well, you catch them, right? So the fish in the waters are a source of potential. There's availability, multiplicity of availability that has the potential to partake in what happens on the land, right? If the land or what's on the land chooses them, right? Like it picks them out, uh, or it hunts for them.
Yeah, this also seems like uh, in the first 3 days there were these domains created of the upper waters, the firmament, the dry land, and the seas. And now on the fourth day, the firmament was populated, and now there's the population of. It seems like the waters in general, which would imply both the upper waters and the seas, or something like that. So it's like a
Yeah, maybe.
so on the fourth day there was a population of the firmament, and now there's a population of the seas and a population of the upper waters or something like that. And then on the sixth day you see that it's going to be the Earth that is populated.
So it's using the word sea monster for the whales, right? In Dutch. Um, so, but in Dutch, it's also saying that the birds fly uh, over the firmament, right? So um, and it says here also in the firmament, right? So the birds are definitely not in the heavenly waters, right? They're below the waters, and they're below the stars and the sun
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
that's true. That's true.
Um, but it's a good question. What happens in the heavenly waters, right? Like that is a good question. Maybe that's the stars. I don't know. Um, so yeah, the word swarming, right? Um, so flying relates to purpose, right? Flying relates to elegance, it relates to directionality, right? Uh, Scale. Um, it costs energy. Uh, Swarming is more related to uh, I need to move because something else pushes me aside than purposeful movement, right? Like um, so there's a different nature between, right? And like, well, like great whales, well, sea monsters, right? Like the nature of those are too big to handle, right? Like that's their quality. Leviathan also comes in there, right? Um,
It reminds me of the moon in the night, where you have all these little stars, and then you have the really big whale or the moon.
so I got a little bit distracted. So can you repeat it? Because I wanna.
Yeah, yeah. Just like the firmament was populated with these large lights and then a lot of small lights, it seems like the whale is really different from other fish. The whale's really
Mhm.
big, but
Right.
you don't have that same pattern in the birds. It
Well,
seems
in my translation, it does.
it does.
Right.
Okay, that's really cool.
Because like 'cause what do you have, right? You have birds and you have insects, right? So there's things that populate the air beyond birds, right? And and in my Bible it explicitly gets referenced. So I'm not I don't know if that's correct, um, but I do want to point a couple things out. So God blessed them, right? So this is a new move. Uh, so blessing means to add on to, right? You extend them beyond themselves in some sense by giving something from you to them, um, which he does by speech, right? So it's a directive, right? So he's blessing them by giving them purpose, right? And the purpose is be fruitful, right? So that's also their justification, right? Like their their fruits or their purposes, right? Because that's what a fruit is, right? The way by which something gets justified, right? Um, and the directive to multiply, right? Um, and the interesting part is that the multiplication is in the waters and the earth, right? So I kind of already mentioned it, right? So the multiplication of the birds is not in the remaining in the firmament, right? Like it's finding a target, right? It's finding something to settle into. Um, and so that means that there's a transformation there too, right? Because like now they're no longer the creature that's up there. They're the creature that's given a body, right? On Earth. Um, and so the other thing that's introduced is movement, right? So they're carriers of something, right? Well, they're carriers of flesh, right, or something, right? They're carriers of a message, right? They're carriers of well of their fruits, I guess. um, and that that means that there's a system, right? There's directionality. There's connectedness, disconnectedness, right? So there's information from the firmament down, right? Uh, and then there's existence in the seas, right? Like which is like good in the sense that it's there to be partaken of or something, right? Because it yeah, I don't think it's good in the sense that it's just there, right? Like the there-ness is in relation to the land and to the light. Um, oh yeah, and the other thing that I wanted to say is the land is being made central, right? So you can also do it hierarchically, right? So you have the firmament above, the land in between, and the waters below, right? So we also have a tree interaction, right? So this tree interaction you can also see in the Norse mythology, right? You have the Asgard, I think, on top, right? You have the earth and you have the hell, right? And I think having the set of three also will make more sense in Genesis 2 because I think it becomes important there as well. Um, so let me just read it. All sorts of all sorts of living creatures that crawl and swarm the waters, and all sorts of birds, all that has wings. And God saw that it was good, right? So there's birds and all that has wings that's separated in my Bible. The, are you ready? You want to read? Just maybe we should do the only
All
the
of the
top.
sixth day on the top. And God said,
Uh,
let the earth bring forth a living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and birth, beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw it was good. Well, yeah. So there's animals now on on the earth or in the earth, something like that. And there's uh, three types of animals. There's the wait, there's three. Yeah, there's three. So there's beasts of the earth, which are sort of wild animals. There's cattle, which are domesticated animals, and creepy crawlies, which are insects or something. They're beyond the wild animals. But it's interesting the sequence in which they are mentioned. So in the first time it's cattle, creeping thing, and then beast of the earth, and then the second time it's cattle. Beast of the earth, cattle, and creeping thing. And it's also interesting that there's the domesticated animals, the cattle mentioned, even though there's no human yet. That's what I get.
yes. So let me see what the Dutch word is. Well, it's also cattle in Dutch, right? So um, a couple things. I am struggling really hard with understanding this because there's a bunch of flipping going on, right? But I think it's important to realize we had the tree that we were coming from, right? So the heaven above, earth in between, and then the waters below. And now we have another tree, but this tree is on land, right? So we have the way that I see it is the cattle is closest to man, right? And so on land, man is the center, right? So the cattle is bound by man, and then the other two have a relationality towards man, right? Which is the beasts of the earth are defined by their that they're far away, right? They're not like the cattle that is close. And the creepy crawly things, I don't know how to truly think about it, but I guess they're everywhere, right? They're far away and close by, but they have two qualities. One is they're not in the dominion of man, right? Because you don't control whether a spider is in your home or not, or like, right? So um, and but they are in the domain of man, right? So they populate the domain of man together with the cattle. Um, so you I don't know if I can like I see it as a straight line in the sense of there's something that adheres to man, which is cattle, and then the thing that doesn't adhere is the creepy crawly things, right? And then you have the horizontal thing where there's something that adheres that's cattle, and then there's something that doesn't adhere that is wild, right? Now I don't know if I can make that as the same as the heaven above and the waters below. Maybe you can make that move.
I can't, but I see what you're pointing towards. Well,
So
there's a it's like it's a three-part or four-part hierarchy, which is the structure of the temple and all of that.
well, at this point it's three parts, right? So um so there
Well,
is
in
a
general, the three-part structure is that there's something higher than you where you are, and then what's below you. So that's the three-part structure of reality, sort of.
right. Well, but this is a three-part structure that has a different axes of relevance, right? So the thing in which the creepy crawly things and the animals, the wild animals, are the same is that they're the outside, right? So there's the outside in the sense of bigger unexplored, and then there's the outside of internal change, right? That's the creepy quality things, right? So there's emergence and emanation, right? In the sense of earthly, right? So a wild animal would also be an, a foreign kingdom that comes in, right? Um, so because you're like it has its own will, right? But you're still gonna have to deal with it, right? You can also walk into it if you leave your home, right? So there's um, and the creepy crawly things is like snakes, right? Scorpions, stuff like that, right? Which are immediate disasters, right? That just occur. Also a fire, for example, a fire outbreak or something, right? It would be something that comes up from the ground and now you're gonna have to deal with it, right? So this becomes important in Genesis 3, right, with the curses. But I think this domain thing, right? Like I think I'm I'm seeing the creepy crawler things as as the external within the domain of man, and the wild animals as the external outside of the domain of man.
I think the wild animals are not yet. So I think there's the challenge of man uh, is to domesticate the wild animals. Or something like that. But not for the creepy crawlies.
Yeah, but I think they're offices, right? So like yes, if you establish relations with the foreign king, right, he's no longer foreign, right? Like now he enters the domain of your relationality, right? And that doesn't mean that you don't have to account for it, right? But in some sense, your skin, right? Like you've what is it? You've absorbed him into participation with you, right? Like you've accounted for him. That's that's the word, right? So in accounting for the external, it becomes part of your reality, right? That's what globalism is, interestingly, right? Like globalism is just like, no, we put everything in our fold, right? So everything is us now, right? We can just do a climate accord and then it will work or something. It's like, well, I think it doesn't work that way because the us that you see isn't an us, right? Like the only us's are actual bodies of people that have a spiritual connection, right? Like anything else is you can pretend that it is something, but it isn't anything as long as there's no adherence to it. Um, so I like when we're talking about these offices, right? And like when you say, well, the wild animals are there to be tamed, it's like, well, yeah, some of them, right? Because that makes them us, right? If they're tamed, they're us. But some of them are not to be tamed, right? They're monsters. They're supposed to be at the edge of our perception, right? And it's just like the poor will always be with us, right? Like the poor are like the creepy crawly things in society, right? They're you can't really solve that problem, right? Because all it will emerge, right? But you still have to deal with it, right? Like you still have to account for it because else things are going to happen and your society will crumble. Um, so I want to point out a couple things. God made. So now there's a new action of making. This is no longer creation or what was the other thing? Bring forth, right? Like this is God is like when I make something, right? I designate it, right, with a purpose. I like they inherit something from me in the making, right? And so um like a knife only makes sense to me as a human with human hands, right? Like and I need to eat and cut things in order to eat, right? Else the knife becomes a nonsensical object, right? So the relationary quality in making is I think important. Um, so then, and 26 it says, and God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. Okay, let's just keep it to that part. Um, So people are always talking about the image of God, but I think the second part, after our likeness, is the important part, not the image. Um, so yeah, what do you see in that?
Well, there's two different. Those seem like two different directions of relationality or something. Is like in our image is that it's like a it's like a movement upwards or something. Is that in in the in the man God is perceptible, but then the other one is that no, uh, man is created from a source. So yeah, I mean, I think that's probably what you're pointing towards, but I see what you mean.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So the way I would say it is right, like the image is you are like a copy, right? So it's like when I write my diary, right? The diary is created in the image of me, right? Because it's expressing an essence of me that is reflecting me, right? And but the diary is not a likeness of me, right? Like diaries don't do things I do, right? So the likeness is in man acts, right? Like it has a hand, right? Like it has agency in the world that is like the agency of God, right? So it it becomes a co-creator, right? It becomes a mover of things. It is enacting the will of God, right? Or has a will like the will of God that can be with God or turned away from him. And that allows him to have dominion, right? Like I think when you're in the image of God, you don't have dominion, right? Like the dominion is a relational quality, right? Like it's like, well, that's an office, right? And so the dominion is we get to be gods over the part of creation that's assigned to us in the land, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, and so it's another image of like a hierarchy, I guess. Although, so we talked about how the animals and all those things are the population of the earth and the waters, which is a similar population as the the lights in the sky. The lights in the sky were given authority over the things they were given authority over, but were the animals given authority over their dominion? Not really. But humans are given authority over the animals' dominion.
mm-hmm. Yes. Right. So in other words, you said, right, like cattle is in reference to humans, right? So it doesn't make any sense, right? So uh, these categories, these three categories that were created only make sense in relation to the human, right? As their dominator. Um, and so there you have four, right? Um, where um, where the cattle is like the body of man or something, right? Like it's holding like the cultivated side of the earth, right? Is in the cattle, right? Like it's the civilization into uh, into nature or something, right? That's what cattle is. And then you have these other categories where this nature is having agency back onto man, right? And then the dominion is in mediating that, right? Like it's the mediative role between these categories. Yeah, and it's interesting that with that, he's also given dominion over the birds and the fish, right? So there's extensions into the sea, right? Or an allowance to extend into the sea, which is different than populating the land, right? Because in some sense, the fish in the sea are like wild animals, right? Like why are they different? Well, the distinction is that they're not on land, right? And then the question is, well, what does the being on land change, right? Well, the being on land means that you're in the domain of being seen or something, right? You're recognizable. Like the fish aren't recognizable.
I was thinking about this. I'm really looking for fine fine distinctions here because I feel like there's a lot of value in them. But so, for example, God gives man dominion over the fish of the sea. Does that include the whale?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Because we don't seem to have dominion over whales, to be honest.
Right. I think that's correct. That's what makes a whale different, right? We also don't have dominion over the sun. And like um and let me check. Like maybe it doesn't give us dominion over the birds either. Like
Like
um,
the small birds or the big birds?
right.
Because I'm checking the I was just checking the Hebrew,
Hmm.
and um, yeah, I don't know. We'd probably have to do like a Hebrew study of the different words and what they mean, and where there's distinction and where there's where there's an exclusive distinction or where there's like an inclusive distinction. You know, it's like
Hmm. But the wild animals are not there either. Like he
mm,
doesn't get dominion over wild animals.
well, in verse 26 he doesn't, but in verse 28
Okay,
he
let's
commands
do
them.
27.
But that's yeah, yeah.
So there's a hyper focus on the image there, right? And then the image is specified as male and female. So what are we to make of that? Or you think that's in independent of his image, or do you actually think that that's qualifying his image?
I have no idea.
Because it is interesting that it's mentioned, right? Like it didn't need to be there. Well, well, let's. What does it do? Well, it creates multiplicity among men, right? Like it creates distinction, right? It creates an image of heaven and earth, right? So the masculine and the feminine as an image of heaven and earth. So maybe it's saying that the dynamic of or the image of God can only be manifest in the union of man and male and female. Maybe that's what it's pointing at, right? That we're insufficient in the masculine or the feminine to to manifest God's image or something. Um, okay, let you can I guess do this.
And God blessed them, and God said unto
I'll
them,
just do
Be
it.
fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree which is in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. So there's a lot there. And well, yeah, so the thing that God says to them, or which God commands them, is different than which he gave them before. So the stuff in verse 28 is subtly different from 26 because, well, first of all, he commands them to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. And he already gave them dominion over fish of the sea, which he repeats, and he already gave them dominion over fowl of the air, which he repeats. But then he says to have dominion over every living thing that moveth upon the earth, which is a larger category than that which he explicitly gave them dominion of over. So he gave them dominion over the cattle and the creeping things, but now it seems to include the wild animals. At least that's how I am reading it. And it's also interesting that in verse 29 it says that the the stuff that was created before is now given to them, which is it's different than being given dominion over in some sense. Uh, and also, it's interesting that the fruits are being given for meat
Yeah,
because,
let's just
well,
stop. We'll get
okay,
to that.
yeah, yeah, okay, okay.
So yeah, so everything that moved, right? Like in my thing, it's still referencing crawling. Um,
Is it? Uh,
but I think we can go back, right? So there's a blessing, right? And now in the blessing there's a speaking, right? But also an imperative, right? Which is I think different, right? Like that's an addition, right? So it's like okay, you're supposed to subdue things, right? So now that that distinguishes man, right? Um, and and so in some sense, I also see the blessing as like a kickstart, right? It's like okay, like let's get the engine rolling, right? Like I'm just flipping the switch and I'm putting in a spirit that now drives the structure that I set in place. Um, So again, right, be fruitful and multiply. I think that's also related to goodness or something, right? It's just like do goodness, do good things, right? And more good things. Uh, Replenish the earth. So I'm gonna read this, but that's an interesting word, right? Like it's like you are responsible for repopulation, um, or population as such. So that there's an expansionary nature there, right? So that has to do with the wild animals, right? Go into the domain of the wild animals and do something with that, right? To make it in your dominion, right? And the subduing is more like to the creepy crawly things, right? It's like the things that come up, like don't don't let them come up too high, right? You have to keep them down so that they don't take over. Um, and so like I'm on board with adding the wild animals in this category, right? Still not sure about the whales, but but I'm okay with the wild animals being part of this directive. Um, so I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree which is full of fruit yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat.
I think the interesting part here, first of all, is that the fruit of the tree is being given as meat. So, um, and then in the next verse, it says that the herbs are given as meat for the beasts. So there's this hierarchical association where you have the hierarchy between the tree and the herb, and the human and the animal, and then the human is given this tree, the fruit of the tree, as meat, but then also the herbs as meat, maybe. And then the beasts are being given the herbs for meat, but not the fruit exactly. So there's this kind of hierarchy. And also, it's later on, God gives to Noah the explicit permission, blessing to eat the meat of animals, but that isn't given here now. So like
Mm.
what that means exactly, I don't know. And also it has to do with like Cain and Abel because uh because Abel was the shepherd, so he was given the animals, but like it isn't actually said that they were given for meat for eating. So maybe there was like some other function that they're given. You know, you can shear sheep and then have clothing or something. I'm not exactly certain, but you know, looking at this analytically, it seems that animals were not given for meat.
So I'm I'm getting a little bit different uh, understanding of this, right? So the way I see it is they're they're to be meat for you, right? So you you make them your flesh, right? Um, so we can see if that makes sense, but like if you eat something, it becomes your flesh, right? So um, if we go to a tree, right, and its fruits, it it's basically it's like a permanent fixture, right? Like it's an externality that can house you, right? And so when when you build your house next to a tree or something, you can use its shade, right? And the shade comes to serve you, right? Or you can take it and you build a house from it, right? You build a hut. You use the wood, you repurpose it to to become an extension of you, right? So that's the way that I see it as flesh, right? Or meat, sorry, right? So the meat part right, is also that which you worship up to God, right? Like it's the refined, uh, right? So in some sense, what it says is the trees are supposed to worship man. Are you good with that, or is that too far
Yeah,
fetched?
I am, and it's clicking with something from uh Saint Ephraim's hymns of paradise. Although I don't exactly remember what. It's something about the trees, the the arms of trees being raised in worship, um, offering fruit. Yeah.
Um, so it's important to mention that with the blessing, right, he adds the trees, right? So that's important, right? So um, the replenishment and the subduing of the earth has to do with this, right? So maybe it's also like you get to plant trees into vineyards or something, right? That's the other aspect, right? You get to direct where the trees are and where they're not, and that allows you to work the fields, right? Like you get to do agriculture and stuff like that, right? So um, and that allows you to have culture as such. Um, so like this was really still doable for me, but then this starts becoming more difficult for my mind. So every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every herb for meat. And it was so. So now there's a qualifier of life entering the thing. Um, it's reducing things to plants, right, that grow on the ground without seeds, right? Or
It's not specifying seeds. It's just saying,
no, it's
you're going to eat of
specifying
the.
not seeds. But this is the thing that I wanted to mention because you said, right, like animals, right, are not included in that which gives meat, right? So it's important to realize the things that are excluded, right? When there's a designation of dominion over something, there's also a refusal to give dominion over something else, right? Because else it would be included, right? So there's a
Well,
purpose.
but I would say that herbs bearing seed is a subset of green herbs in general. You?
No, like herbs don't have seeds, but I think it's even you can look at it differently, right? Because this is a new category. This category didn't pre-exist in the text.
You didn't?
No,
Okay.
like that's why it's confusing, right? And so it has a qualifier of green, right? So what does green mean? Well, green means that it's not mature yet, right? Like it's still growing, right? It hasn't reached purpose. Like that's what a green when someone is green, a green student, right, or a green soldier or whatever. That means that they've just arrived, right? They're fresh. So the way I read it is he's saying that the things that go come from the ground, right, like grass, right, that aren't fulfilling their purpose as grass yet, right? So we can just say it in that manner. Those things are allowed to be repurposed towards things that have life,
That makes sense. Yeah.
right? So in other words, the things that come up from the earth, right, can give body to life, but
Yeah.
without them bearing seeds, right? Because then their seed is going up into life, right? Participating into life. That's their seed. That's their like that's the way that their purpose manifests, right? Like so their purpose is no longer in the identity that they came into being with. Their purpose is now subsumed by being eaten by a sheep, for example, right? Just so they serve to yeah to be the body of the sheep, right? Like to become the flesh of the sheep. That's what I think is said there. And every fall of the air, right? So that means that they're also giving body to the things coming down from heaven, right? Uh, which like I guess that's like what is that? Do you have a visualization for what that would be?
No, no, but I think it's significant that the animals, the beasts of the earth, and all those things. Wait. Hmm. I think it's significant that the animals on Earth and the birds are given the same food.
Right. Well, but that's what I'm trying to figure out because like it makes sense to me, right, that the things that emerge get to participate in cattle, for example, right? So then basically cattle is like doing an oil rig or something, right? Like you
I don't
set an
think
oil,
is cattle mentioned in the 30th verse.
yeah, everything that creepeth on the earth.
Okay.
Are you thinking that it's only the
Maybe,
every beast of the earth it says, right? Every fowl of the air and everything
but
that
but but
creepeth.
the beasts of the earth are the wild animals.
Are they
Yeah,
really?
yeah. Look at verse
Okay.
25. It says, "Beast of the earth, cattle, and creepers."
Oh, okay. So cattle is not mentioned then.
This is really we're discovering new things. This is
Because if that's the case, then cattle is explicitly not mentioned, right?
yeah, yeah. Because otherwise, it would be shorter and easier to just say the living creatures.
All right. So that means that cattle is supposed to have different food, which would be fruit like grains or something,
Okay.
maybe, or fruits, right? Anyway, let's just so there's three categories, right? So there's the thing that comes from earth, uh, from horizontally. There's things that come from above, and then there's things that come from below, and they're all types of emergence, right? Because that's what the green herbs signify, right? The green herbs are emerging things, and they go into three categories. There's emergence from heavens, there's emergence from the lands, and there's emergence from below, right? Which then you so there's a mediation that's happening from the seas, right? So the seas are no longer partaking, right? But they're partaking through creepy crawling things in some sense, right? Like that's the new seas or something. Um, maybe that's just the extent to it. Maybe we're looking too far into it. It's like okay, no, there's uh, yeah, I don't know. but it's interesting that this green herb is mentioned as a separate food. Yeah, so the last line, I guess we want to do the line. God saw everything that he had made, right? So he's doing, I think, a new move. Right? He's not looking at what he did on day 6. He's looking at the the coming together of everything into the final thing on day 6. So that's the first thing. And and behold, well, beholding is also taking a step back, right? Like you're disengaging when you behold something. And it was very good, right? So now we're having a qualifier, right? It's like no, like it's not just good. No, this is like a, a new tier of goodness, right? Like there's a goodness in the communion of everything or something, right? Like in the relationality coming together, right? Or there's a glory in there or something, right? Like that's the word I would use. Um, and then
You,
he closes.
you you previously made a distinction about God making things instead of letting the earth bring forth and so on.
Mhm.
And here it refers that he saw the things he had made.
Yeah, he made man, right? So but let's just say it in this way, right? So what's making, right? What's the distinction between making and creating? You make something. Making is a process. Like it's not an A to B. It's like no, like I'm working towards it, right? So it's an interaction, something that gets expression over time, right? And so if we go back to the idea of day 4 with the cyclicality and stuff, right? Like human beings don't make any sense without them being embedded in all of the things that move around them, right? So there's a physical embedding in the sense that the land that they interface with, right? And there's the seas and the heavens that they interface with, but then they also interface with the cycles that move them, and all of this together with their responsibility, with their directive, right? Like be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it, makes man to be something, right? Like it draws something out in man, and I think that's what he made, right? Like that ultimately what he made is what he brought forth in man. Um, and that was very good, right? So in some like that's our purpose, right? It's like our purpose is very good. Um, yeah, so I think it's important to realize that what God made or something is a whole, right? Like it has a wholeness, right? And the wholeness has these 3 dimensions, right? Time, heaven and earth, and material being, right? And um, I guess we have to look at that whole. Like if we're trying to look through God's eyes, right? Behold ourselves. We need to look in these categories. Um, yeah, and so
So God makes a bunch of things, and then at this point, he beholds it and calls it a thing. He calls it that which he had made, or something like that. So you're pointing towards the unity of it, that it's a system. It's kind of one work, one masterpiece, and it's sort of it's almost the emergent thing where like something didn't exist and then it gets put together and then the unity is injected or something at the end. But this isn't the case because God made it purposefully. So it's like a craftsman.
Right, but again, right? Like if I make, well, why do I say again? If I make an instrument, I don't know what music is going to be played with my instrument, right? So there's well, that's what you behold, right? Like that's something of the joy of making an instrument is you get to see it used. You get to see it fulfill its purpose, and part of that purpose is not you. Like it's literally not you. It is other, right? Like the inclusion of the other is bringing glory to it. Um, because like that's the creation of heaven and earth. Like earth is the other, right? Like you need the other for things. Um, so a bunch of things I want to say about the bigger structure, and I want to talk about the completeness as well, but I want to complete the text first. And it says, and the evening and the morning were the sixth day. It says like there it stops. Right? This is like it's a weird way to stop a text. It's like so okay, we're living in the sixth day. Is that it? Right? Because like the morning never ended or whatever, right? Um, like it is an open ending at least on day six, right? And like day seven is not included in Genesis chapter one, right? So there's a it's weird that it doesn't get rounded or something, right? Um, and I guess it's setting the table, right? It's setting the table. It's setting the arena or the preconditions within which life, right, which is like a higher form of life than the life that is mentioned in the text itself, right? So there's a life of of the spirit of God in His creation, expressing His will, right? His directive, because that's the stage that's being set up, right? Like be fruitful, multiply, and like we're having the like with the game, right? We're like, okay, you have your quest, right? Now go play the game, and then at the end, we have a means to judge whether you played the game well or not, right? Like did you adhere to the constraints of the game, or were you doing a side quest the whole time? Um, so yeah, I'm thinking about these trees and how they get brought back in, right? In the Dominion. Um, so there is something with the blessing, right? Like the blessing in the sense of moving, right? So if I bless you, right? like you could say that I set a course for you, right? Like I now create a space in which you can find expression, right? So I do that through two means, right? Like I do that through putting your attention at something, right? Which would be uh, creating an image for you, right? To see, and I do that by giving you a spirit, right? Or I can do that. I don't have to do that, right? But like I can inspire you, right? So that something fills you and moves you, right? Like um, that's a likeness, right? Like that spirit is asking is a way of being that invites you to be more like it, right? Um, and so then there's also the directives, right, of subduing or whatever, right? If I say here's this pen is yours, right? Now I give you dominion over the pen. Your agency changes, right? Like who you are, what you can do changes, right? So the way that you're going to manifest yourself also changes, right? So the fact that I give you dominion, right, or it's like, oh, Gustav, are you going to do this video with me, right? Like I'm giving you a dominion, like I'm giving you a responsibility over something, right? And that's going to call you out in your participation with me, right? And in return, it's going to add on to you, right? Like it's going to be food for your flesh, right? Like for your manifestation. Um, so so I think when we're talking about these relational categories, right, and then the things that we get to relate to, um, and I don't know, like get comfortable within them, um, then I think we get to see what God wants, right, or the nature of God in our lives.
Yeah.
Yep. You want to say something in like I guess what you're taking from it. Um,
I I really like the day I really like the days of creation, especially 4 to 6, because I think they're really complex and they're really subtle because we end up having a lot of quite clear relationships and categories, but then there's also ones that are more subtle and implied. And I think that's a quality of those relationships is that they're implied rather than strictly designated. Um, and I think they're really important to understanding the Bible. Like even the stuff with the seed and the grass being unintentional and all this stuff, it adds a whole new quality that I hadn't really thought of to the parable of the sower, for example. That there's the sower that goes around and sows his seed and throws it everywhere. And it's like he isn't sowing trees, but he's sowing grass, and then that's something to think of. And then also there's a there's the parable of the mustard seed, and then that's a tiny little seed, but it doesn't exactly seem to come from a fruit, but it builds a tree.
mm.
And then that's like, well, okay, there's a whole new connection there, and I've flown really high, and my it's difficult. It's difficult, but it I think these chapters make a lot more sense now that we've talked through them together. to me.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I like this idea, right? So it's like, well, yeah, a mustard seed doesn't come from a fruit, but it still builds a tree, right? And it's like, okay, now we're having a different relationship. It's like, okay, but what is the mustard seed being put into connection to? Faith. Well, what does faith do? Well, faith creates something out of nothing, right? Like it's that which is not seen, right? Like, okay, like we can go grow trees at places that can't have trees according to the rules of nature, right? Um, so yeah, like that that gives a whole spin on faith, and you have the three religious virtues, right? Like hope, faith, and love, right? Um, and and they're somewhat cheating, right? They're cheating creation in a sense because well they are giving us powers beyond ourselves, right? Like I've been reading Genesis 3 with the eating of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? And I'm like, this is eternal, right? Like, because every container that we're in, right, we get to challenge, right? We get to say, is this container that we're in right or wrong? Like that's an option that's always available to us. And every time we do that, we create a mess, right? Like that's when we sin. It's like, okay, like we're embedded in the structure, the godly structure, at least hopefully, because if you're not embedded in the godly structure, you're screwed, right? But let's assume that you are embedded in the godly structure. You get to break it, right? And like Christ said to his disciples, you get to bind things on earth so that they will be bound in heaven, right? So like that move is available. And people make that move all the time, but not from a godly point, right? Like people are binding things all the time that aren't bound or shouldn't be bound, right? Which is like wizardry, right? All of these uh like fortune telling, all of these things, right? They're making connections or they're establishing spaces that shouldn't be, right? And then you get creations of well of a not holy nature. and um and so yeah, like we do get to transcend our containers, right? But like Jesus calls to people, right? Like he's calling them out, right? So there is a way that we're called out of the garden that we're stuck in into the next garden, right? That God sets up for us, right? Like there's a path where we do get to transcend. And like we have this question about whether we get to eat the fruit or not, right? It's like, well, was it would they get the fruit or not? It's like, no, that's the wrong question. Like why would you want the fruit? Like you want to walk with God, you don't want the fruit. Like you're still stuck in this stupid problem. It's like you're missing the point. Like God will bring you where you need to be, and you don't know what the tree is that is in the center. Like you don't know that tree because like the tree could change. Like how would you know? Like you're not eating from it. Like you don't know the tree. So like anyway, I've I'm just seeing it, right, and it's like, okay, like, well, how does that apply to Genesis 1? Well, it's like, okay, like I only need to know what God tells me about Genesis 1, right? Like I shouldn't go force Genesis 1 upon the world, right? Like I should have it speak to me and have it reveal the world instead of trying to reach for what I can attain through it. And so like that's I guess the thing that I want to walk out with, right, is like, okay, like God gave us dominion over the earth, right? Like gave us the trees and the grass for meat. It's like, well, like just enjoy your meat. Just enjoy your meat. Um, and and so personally, right, like the thing that I find more important, and this goes also a little bit back to Genesis 3, is like what is important is that there's things left out, right? Like there's things that are not included, and we should not try to include them, right? Like the thing that I realize is that Eve said we're not allowed to touch the tree. Like God never said anything about touching the tree. Why are we including this move? I see everybody see doing it. It's like, well, this thing is bad. It's like, yeah, but the step before it isn't bad. It's like, yeah, but the step before it will put me into temptation. It's like, yeah, who gives a shit? Still not bad. Like the fact that you make the temptation bad is you create a new reality, right? You create a fictional reality that isn't true, right? You're creating an artificial limit, um, and thereby you're not living in faith, right? You're not having the space open uh, to be with God because you're in fear, and yeah, like that's been speaking to me a lot, like this living in fear. Um, this, I mean, like go forth and have dominion over the world, right? Cultivate the world. It's like, but that's a hell of a message, right? That's fearful. It's like, well, if you're scared of that message, you're never going to be able to do it, right? So like you can't have that fear cut you off from the calling that's placed upon you. So yeah, like the things that are left out are important, right? Because they also highlight the things that are included, right? They give them more importance, more meaning, um, and we see this in the world as well, right? Like people don't realize that like when I do something, I'm also not doing something else that I could be doing, but I choose not to do, right? Like that. The fact that I'm using force, for example, in one way, but I'm not using it in another way, is me doing something to good for you, right? Like there's a gratitude element there, a way that we can be grateful for bad things, right? In our eyes, at least. Oh no, it could have been worse, right? Like, or oh no, like that person really cares about this one thing, and like they haven't they couldn't they didn't do what they were right in their right to do to me, right? Like those things are important. So please leave comments, and we will try to do Genesis 2, which I already prepared. I don't know, Gustav, have you prepared it?
Not directly.
So, because it's really confusing for me, and like I hope you can shed a lot of light for me on that one. Like Genesis one was a little bit more obvious to me. So, everybody, I hope you all tune in. Maybe we can do this live someday, um, if Gustav is up for that, but we'll see. Peace.